Hello YouTube, Adrian and Bernard again. Today we're bringing you episode number 9, which is titled Secret Structures on the Moon, which talks about UFOs and bases that are on the moon, things that most people haven't heard about. It's kind of taboo to talk about, but Bernard will share with us about it.
When I was on my computer, I was doing some research and looking into things, and I ran across this on the computer called Secret Structures on the Moon, and I tuned into it.
But you can YouTube.
On YouTube. You can get it from YouTube. But Structures on the Moon, Secret Structures on the Moon, you can Google or go on YouTube and get it. And they was saying that this officer or soldier was saying he saw photos of alien structures on the moon, on the opposite side. And when I saw that, I went back to my old book called Inside the Spaceships, written by an astronomer called George Adamski. Now, I had this book in the early 60s. From his book, Inside the Spaceships, before the astronauts took the first trip around our own planet, he was saying as he was being taken around the opposite side of the moon, he was in a craft, he met these people. And he said as he was being taken around the opposite side of the moon, he was told by the alien, "Now we are approaching the side never before seen from Earth. Look at the surface directly below us. See, there are mountains in this section. You can even see snow on the peaks of the higher ones, and a growth of heavy timber on the lower slopes. On this side of the moon are a number of mountain lakes and rivers. You can see one of the lakes below. The rivers empty into a very large body of water. Now you can see a number of communities of varying sizes, both in the valleys and on the mountain slopes. Preferences of people here as anywhere else vary in regard to living at one or another altitude. And here as elsewhere, the natural activities to support life are very similar to those wherever mankind is found." Adamsky said, they were still saying, had we time to land and be depressurized, the person's name, he called him Ramu, went on, and then travel about, you would personally meet some of the people. But as far as studying the surface of the moon is concerned, the way you are viewing it now is far more practical. Adamsky said, I realized the truth of this as a fair-sized city assembled on the screen in front of us. Actually, we seemed to be drifting over the rooftops, and I could see people walking along clean, narrow streets. There was a more thickly built-up central section which I assumed to be the business district, although it was not crowded with people. I noticed no cars of any kind parked along the streets, although I did see several vehicles moving just above the streets, since they appeared to have no wheels. Inside, they were comparable to our buses, varying from one another in about the same degree. The alien explained, a few of the people here do have their own conveyances, but for the most part they depend on the public utilities at which you are looking. Just outside the city proper was a comparatively large cleared section with an immense building alongside. It looked like a hangar, and Ramu confirmed this by saying, we have to construct a few hangars near the cities for convenience in landing with the supplies we bring to the population here. And remember, this is on the opposite side of the moon. Everything not available locally for their needs, in exchange, they furnish us with certain minerals found on the moon. Another person by the name of Howard Menger also claims to have been taken to the moon in the 50s. In his book, he shows a picture of a dome as he is approaching the moon. Now it is being brought out. If you Google this secret structures on the moon, you'll remember what I said and what he's saying now. And this was done in the 50s. That's all with that.
Tell us a little more about George Adamski, and for the viewers that don't know anything about George Adamski, how he met these extraterrestrials, and how the trips he went on. And
Okay. He claims that as an astronomer, looking through his scope, he used to see these vehicles passing between, I think, the Earth and the Moon, or Earth and the Sun, I'm not sure, but he used to see them passing by. And he would wonder who these individuals were. I don't remember it all now, but this was in the 60s. He said that he had an urge one day to go to, I think, a restaurant, but I'm not sure. I think it was a restaurant. And he said he sat in a place where he was having a meal, and this fellow came and, I wish I had had it, came and sat next to him and started talking to him, and revealed in some way that he was not of this earth, that they had gotten his thoughts while viewing the crafts going from one place to another, and decided they would contact him, and they contacted him. He said he was taken in a car. He said somehow they did something to indicate that they weren't of this planet. I don't know what it was. And they invited him on a trip to a certain area, and he took it. It's a little bit more than that. And he said when he got there, he saw a craft that was landed on the ground. I don't know if it was somewhere in California or what. But they took him aboard the craft. I don't know if it was this time that he saw these things or not. He was taken above the earth, where he said when he looked out the windows, they were going to show him what space looked like when being out there. When he looked out through the porthole of the craft, he said he saw complete blackness as far as space was concerned. But he saw all these lights flickering. He said it resembled fireflies flickering all over. When John Glenn, I think it was him, who made the first trip around our planet, he said, now you can Google John, I guess you can Google John Glenn, you might find that, where he said that when he looked out the porthole of the ship, of the craft that he was in, the thing that was going around our Earth, he said when he looked out the window, he said space was totally black, and they saw all these flickering lights, and he said they looked like fireflies flickering all over. George Adamski said this before he did. George Adamski was eventually taken, where was he taken to?
Venus?
No, I don't think he was taken. He was shown Venus.
Okay.
He was shown Venus. And he said that, the things that he said was ridiculed. He said that Venus was habitable when we said it wasn't. He said the reason why we said it was inhabitable because of the heat. But he said when we were sending our craft, our shuttles, whatever you call it, probes around Venus, they weren't picking up the ground surface of heat. They were picking up the belt around the planet. That's why they thought it was too hot. He said he had found out that the environment there was similar to Florida all over. That was a condition. He said they don't see the stars as we do, because they had a cloudy formation around our planet. And I heard that at one time we had a very cloudy formation around our planet. He said also, he talked about the belt around our planet that had an energy that we were going to have to worry about as our astronauts were leaving and coming back. Later it was called the Van Allen belt, discovered by a person by the name of Van Allen. But he mentioned this long before. I have it in the books. He mentioned this long before. He also said, and I think I mentioned this before, but I'm not sure. He mentioned about how the planets are heated. I think I mentioned this.
You mentioned about this Venus. I don't think.
All right. He also said that Mars was inhabited. And there are indications now that they're bringing these things out slowly, and somehow they're because of the Freedom of Information Act, some people get access to the transcripts of the astronauts, and they're saying all kinds of things about the moon that's not being told, about the Venus, about Mars. They're not telling the people these things. You know, it's very difficult when, and I think I mentioned this before, when scientists say something, they're theorizing, but they say it as if they know. And they put it into book form to be put into our educational system. And they're put out into the colleges and the high schools and things like that. This is a great expense to those who are doing this. That means they have to reap their profits from selling these books, putting these books out into these schools. Now, if something comes along to show that they were wrong, because of this profit motive, this monetary system, they're not going to release it, because they release it, they're going to may have to take all these books back. The students are not going to want to study something that's an error. They don't want to live on that. They want to live on truth. They want to live on something that's going to give them a solid basis in life. But because of this system, these things are not brought up. When the astronauts went to the moon, the transcripts
for the Apollo 11.
for the Apollo, we mentioned this before, they say that there's structures on the moon.
To describe them as hotels.
Hotels,
as a
domes.
Santa Claus does exist.
Santa Claus does exist. The astronaut that went around in the capsule, went to the other side, saw what Adamsky was talking about. And he said, Santa Claus does exist. All things that they should put. But like I said before, these ham radios, they intercept sometimes. So they had to use code words, so the ham radios wouldn't understand what they were saying.
Santa Claus being...
Santa Claus who had workers. Santa Claus wasn't alone in all the work that he'd done, according to what we learned about Santa Claus. So he was saying Santa Claus is alive or something like that.
Santa Claus does exist.
Or does exist. So there were other people there. All these things are, you know, like, I would never know these things if I wasn't into the field of research. Most of the people, they just accept. They don't research anything. They hear something, the government say, oh, that's not right, that's not true. And the people say, okay, they know better.
You can explain to the viewers about Adamsky and how they would visit him and come over his house and let him photograph them.
Yes, I have a photo in a book. I don't have it down here.
You can look it up online.
Yeah. Oh, yes, right.
You guys can look it up online.
And then now, that photo was ridiculed. They ridiculed him like I don't know what. Now, they're showing his photos. They're showing the pictures because they know that they were real. And they're releasing it to the public slowly.
And, you know, being a ufologist, you know, looking into George Adamski, I will admit that I once ridiculed George Adamski as well after looking at the picture, saying that it looked like something that he had made and put on a string. If you look at there's a video, you can look at the object moving on a Polaroid that he took.
Yeah.
And I thought it was something he had on a string. It looked like something he made on a string. Until one day I saw a documentary, and it was explained to me, and I never thought about it in this way, that the object that was shown moving that Adamsky took, I believe it was his assistant who took it.
Yeah, I think it was his assistant.
Him and his assistant who took it.
I think it was.
Right outside his house. That the object actually changed shape as it was moving. And I never ever thought about it that way, because all I was seeing, like, you know, was the object moving on, like I thought it was on a string. But never really thinking about the object itself and how it moved and how the shape of the object changed as it moved. And another thing too that really made me a believer of that sighting and was the size of the object moving against the trees. And clearly seeing how large it is, how large the craft was moving against the trees, kind of gave away its size and shape in the background against the trees. So then you would have an idea of how big this object really was. And the way it was moving. And I mean, this is again in the 1950s.
Yeah, 1950s.
You know, so I mean, it's so long ago for him. Even if it was a hoax, I mean, it had to be something that was really, I mean, like a masterpiece to do in the 1950s. But I mean, looking at it now, the footage, and I definitely believe George Adamski had these encounters with these extraterrestrials. And another thing that you know, he had met these beings who told them things about our planet, about how they can, you know, shut down, you know, stop us. You know, Bernard will explain that to us in a minute. But they told us things about our planet with polar shifts. You know, the poles shifting. That's something that is a concern now. You know, with our poles shifting. But you know, they knew about this a long time ago, and they told us to Adamski. And another thing too that Bernard can explain is the government and the Pope were very interested in getting with George Adamski. I mean, if he was a person who was a loony bin, why would the government be so interested in meeting with him all the time, and the Pope? And these extraterrestrials actually gave Adamski a package to give to the Pope, which was very interesting. But I'll let Bernard explain that.
I don't know too much about it. I only know that he says that he was given something to give to the Pope. And when he met the Pope gave him something, a medallion, that others say that he had to have had that meeting with the Pope, because that Pope would never give him that medallion, something he wouldn't give out like that. But the energy that we use, anything that we do, we have to think first. And they know this. They can pick up thoughts. They can cut off all the energy. I think I mentioned this before.
You can mention it again.
They can cut off all the energy. A lot of these blackouts that we had. I remember when I was working for Transit Authority. When was it? So I was working for them. It had to be in the 70s, I think. We had a blackout here in the New York area. I don't know how far it extended. My train had gotten down from 179th Street down to Chambers Street when all the lights went out. So we couldn't take another train to go back. A lot of trains were stopped in between stations and things like that. During the day, I had to catch a bus to come back to Queens. I couldn't catch a train because they weren't running. I forget where I went. But later on, I had gotten something. Oh, when we were down at Chambers, since we couldn't go anywhere, we came out of the subway and sat down for a while. Me and some of the other fellows, and I said, maybe it was caused by a UFO. I don't know much was said after that. I don't think much was said after it. But later on, I think it was a Ripley's. I had a book on it. Ripley's Believe It or Not said that when this blackout happened, there was observed a craft. I don't know whether it was along the Hudson River or what, in the vicinity moving along when the lights went out. I don't know if anybody out there remembers Arthur Godfrey, well-known, I don't know whether he was a comedian or what, but well-known. And he said when we had that huge blackout, he was in a plane above the surface, above the earth, flying. And he said when the lights went out, he looked down and he saw this red ball of fire, looked like a red ball of fire, or a red ball of light, moving across the land, and all these lights were going out. Anybody see Close Encounters of the Third Kind? If you did, you remember when, I forget the guy who was the actor, Hoffman, was it Hoffman? He was driving his, no, you saw a light in the sky. You saw, you saw a light in the sky moving along, and all of a sudden you see the lights going out. And he was a person who had to do with the electric lights and things out there on I think out on the streets, outside. And he was to go check out things. As he was traveling, he stopped to look at his map to see where he was going. All the lights were out. And he looked in his rear view mirror and he saw some lights come up. And he was looking at his map and he waved to the guy, go around. So the car went around and so almost cursed him out. Said, what are you doing in the middle of the street? And went on. He was looking at his map. And he saw another light and he told it, move on, move on. And he wasn't looking, and the lights didn't go around. It went up like this and came up over his vehicle, and all of a sudden everything started to vibrate. And he started to shake. You ever see that?
No, I never.
You got to see that. But they have the ways and means of cutting off all our energy in case we decide to go to war. We have to think first and then pull something that causes electrical, like missiles, to ignite and move off. But they are observing us. But look into these things. Just look. Be aware of what's going on. Don't let these people put this thing, oh, the government saying that we're sick people thinking about these things, or we're loonies. You know, find out for yourself. That's the way they keep you from listening to these things. I ain't gonna listen. The government said they're loonies. It's not true.
You know, since we talked about the moon and these bases on there, there's a documentary that's really good. I believe it's called NASA Footage UFOs.
I have that, yeah.
And they show you actual NASA footage from the NASA channel that shows UFOs in it, and how they try to cover it up and quickly change the camera angle. And in some of the videos, you see intelligent maneuvers by these craft.
Yeah.
You know, it's unbelievable that, you know, this amount of evidence is out there. And I mean, the astronauts themselves have talked about it. I mean, Gordon Cooper, you know, had mentioned it. Edgar Mitchell. Was it Buzz Aldrin?
Yeah, Buzz Aldrin. All the things that we put there. I have a letter down here. I don't know where it's at. By Gordon Cooper to the United Nations, telling of his experiences with these crafts, and as well as others that he did not name who had experiences with these UFOs, and what to do about it. They want to know how we can go about meeting these people, because he even said by meeting these people, a lot of things that we could advance. Yeah, it would be in there. I think it would be in there. Yeah. Okay, I'll read that letter. There's a letter here that he sent in the 70s. I think. Let me see that. No, that's not. Would be the UFO. This one right here.
Okay.
He explains, and I have a copy of the letter that, you know, that it was sent there. That's maybe it.
Yep.
All right, here's what he says. This was in 1978. It was delivered to an ambassador called Ambassador Griffith of the United Nations. He says, quote, "I wanted to convey to you my views on our extraterrestrial visitors, popularly referred to as UFOs, and what might be done to properly deal with them. I believe that these extraterrestrial vehicles and their crew are visiting this planet from other planets, which obviously are a little more technically advanced than we are here on Earth. I feel that we need to have a top-level coordinated program to scientifically collect and analyze data from all over the Earth concerning any type of encounter, and to determine how best to interface with these visitors in a friendly fashion. We may first have to show them that we have learned to resolve our problems by peaceful means rather than warfare, before we are accepted as fully qualified universal team members. This acceptance would have tremendous possibilities of advancing our world in all areas. Certainly then, it would seem that the UN has a vested interest in handling this subject properly and expeditiously. I should point out that I am not an experienced UFO professional researcher. I have not yet had the privilege of flying a UFO nor of meeting the crew of one. I do feel that I am somewhat qualified to discuss them, since I have been into the fringes of the vast areas in which they travel. Also, I did have occasion in 1951 to have 2 days of observation of many flights of them of different sizes flying in fighter formation, generally from east to west over Europe. They were at a higher altitude than we could reach with our jet fighters of that time. I would also like to point out that most astronauts are very reluctant to even discuss UFOs due to the great numbers of people who have indiscriminately sold fake stories and forged documents, abusing their names and reputations without hesitation. Those few astronauts who have continued to have participation in the UFO field have had to do so very cautiously. There are several of us who do believe in UFOs and who have had occasion to see a UFO on the ground or from an airplane. There was only one occasion from space which may have been a UFO. If the United Nations agrees to pursue this project and to lend their credibility to it, perhaps many more well-qualified people will agree to step forth and provide help and information. I am looking forward to seeing you soon. Sincerely, L. Gordon Cooper, Colonel, United States Air Force, retired astronaut. What else can you say?
Yeah. Any last words?
No, like I always say, just search. You're going to find it out. It's going to come. Don't let it be a shock. Look into it. Look at that thing I gave there. All the astronauts. Google them. They'll tell you what's going on. They can't put it in the newspapers. The government says they're, what is it? Something, I forget what they call it. Something they put on the newspaper so they can't release it unless they approve it. But
with that said, that wraps up our episode. And as always, please leave us comments or questions, and we'll get back to you and share this with others. You know, let's get the word around. Thank you, and bye-bye.
Take care.